Great. I see it's 6 o'clock. So everyone can hear me? My audio's on. Perfect. So maybe we'll get started. I'm not sure if there's anyone else here from um, either the working group or Chair Myatt as the chair of the BASWR board. If anyone would like to say anything before we get started, otherwise I can jump right in.
No, can you hear me okay, Ann?
I can, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Just was listening here and
Okay,
thanks for offering this up. I don't know
great.
how many are attending. I can't really see that, but I guess we'll know tomorrow.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Well, I'll get started. Thanks to all of those in attendance. We are going to be going through the draft business case we've put together to support the 7-member municipalities that are responsible for the Bruce Area Solid Waste Recycling Organization. So I'm going to walk you through that document today. Our agenda is really to give you an overview of the project and provide you with some additional background and context for the reason that we are proposing a change in the governance structure for the organization, as well as go into a bit more of the details in regards to what that governance structure will look like and the implementation plan required to make that happen over the next year or so. And then we will open the floor for any questions that the public may have. So the objective of our engagement, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Ann Lindsay. I'm a senior manager with KPMG's Public Sector Advisory Practice. And so we've been supporting the 7-member municipalities that are governing the Bruce Area Solid Waste and Recycling Organization, assessing governance and operating models with the idea of transitioning to a municipal services corporation. So that work involved assessing legal, financial, workforce, and implementation transition considerations, doing a financial model of the new organization and its financial sustainability over time, identifying requirements for incorporation, governance, and workforce transition, as well as supporting extensive stakeholder engagement and public consultation activities to support the development of the business case. So the project drivers, and the reason that we were engaged by the 7-member municipalities is to modernize a legacy joint undertaking model that was put together in 1999 to align new governance, liability protection, and decision-making authority in the context of the changes through the provincial recycling program that happened in January and how that has impacted BASWR's role in service delivery. So this business case is to provide an evidence-based review for all of the member municipalities to evaluate the governance and operating options under a municipal services corp in relation to BASWR's new contractual positioning through the changes in the provincial recycling program. So our approach was multi-phased. It was a 4-phased approach that includes stakeholder consultations, document review, jurisdictional research. We had one-on-one and group discussions with all of the member municipality CAOs and working group members, as well as engaged with the BASWR board and management representatives from BASWR, as well as each of the member municipality mayors and additional stakeholders and comparator MSCs as well. The engagement included a council survey as well as a public survey, and we had 657 responses to our public survey. I just wanted to highlight some of the key takeaways from the public survey. So we had, like I said, 657 responses. It was quite well received. The largest percentage of responses was from the township of Huron-Kinloss. 88% of the respondents surveyed said they were very satisfied with BASWR's services and reliability. They consistently noted the organized landfill, the helpfulness of staff interactions at any time they were accessing BASWR services. So great feedback on operations and service delivery through this survey. 72% of the respondents believe that their municipality currently does have appropriate oversight over BASWR's operations, and 97% of survey respondents believed that having a clear and defined oversight over the organization is important going forward. So to provide a little bit more background and context for the reason that we were engaged to undertake this review, the 7-member municipalities came together in 1999 through a joint undertaking structure to establish the Bruce Area Solid Waste Recycling Organization. It's been operating with a very lean and cost-conscious operating culture over the last 25 years. Certainly, they are operationally reliable. We got great feedback through the public survey, as well as all stakeholders generally viewed day-to-day service deliveries very strong and reliable, and very successful under this lean operating model. The role of the organization has evolved because of the recycling transition that was implemented by the province in January, and that has resulted in a contract with Waste Management to deliver recycling services to the 7 area member municipalities. And that is requiring a change in the governance and legal structure of the organization. So the reason that we've undertaken this review is to really try to minimize the structural limitations that exist right now through the joint undertaking structure. And those are essentially that governance is not sufficiently formalized. So there's been limited or inconsistent council oversight or reporting back to councils over the last 20 years. That is becoming more and more important with the current contract for recycling services that is now in place with Waste Management. There's a need to formalize governance structure and ensure that the board is empowered to govern the corporation, and the member municipalities are empowered as the shareholders of the corporation and have appropriate decision-making lie at both of those governance levels. And finally, the financial and contractual risk requires clear oversight. So we need to ensure that clear financial, legal, and liability separation from the member municipalities with the BASWR Corporation is in place to support the ongoing waste management contract, as well as ensure that there's capabilities for borrowing, capital investments, a reserve strategy, and a strategy for dividend or retained earnings distribution. So what is a municipal services corporation? So a municipal services corporation is established under the Municipal Act, and it provides the legal framework for municipalities to create a corporation that provides a system or a service that a municipality itself could provide. And the MSC must be wholly owned or jointly owned by a municipality or one or more public sector entities. So in this case with BASWR, the 7-member municipalities would all be shareholders of the BASWR Corporation or the BASWR Municipal Services Corporation. They require articles of incorporation. So, and they are pursuant to the Ontario Business Corporations Act or the Nonprofit Corporations Act, depending on how it is set up. The corporate governance structure requires a board of directors and management of the organization, and the directors have statutory and common law duties that requires a fiduciary duty to act in the best interests of the corporation. So for BASWR, the governance framework would identify the member municipalities as shareholders, the authority that's delegated to the MSC board to govern the corporation on a day-to-day basis, the role of management to continue to provide that really reliable service that they have provided for the last 20 years, and the matters that are requiring shareholder approval. So any decision making that would have to go back to each of the 7-member municipalities to make those decisions. So in the Municipal Act, the Municipal Services Corporation regulation is 59906 if you wanted to look it up and do a little bit more research, but essentially it outlines the processes for municipalities to establish an MSC, and public consultation is certainly one step within that process. A number of other considerations need to be addressed, such as asset transfer, and also establishing the governance structure for the organization. So the case for change. So under an MSC structure, there is the opportunity to modernize the governance and operating model to better align with the evolving requirements that have occurred with the provincial recycling changes and BASWR's new role as a subcontractor with waste management. So a municipal services corporation is going to provide that modernized governance and role clarity. The member municipalities and the board of directors of the MSC will have very clear decision-making authorities, and their roles will be separated by various accountabilities. The financial governance and sustainability long-term of the organization is a priority through the transfer to this municipal services corporation. So the accountability and transparency that will be put in place that requires BASWR to report back to its shareholders will help to ensure that there's very clear line of sight into the financial sustainability and success of the organization moving forward. And finally, the legal structure to support business operations will be in place. So there'll be legal documents that facilitate BASWR to enter into contracts, hold assets, manage reserves, investing in capital, additional capital investments if they choose, and they'll legally be structured separate from the member municipalities as part of this change. So our proposed governance model is to take the current 1999 joint undertaking that has supported effective municipal collaboration over the last 25 years and move it into a municipal services corporation where BASWR maintains its municipal ownership. So all 7 member municipalities maintain ownership of the corporation, and they act as shareholders. So we are proposing a 9-member board of directors, a representative from each of the 7 member municipalities, as well as 2 additional independent skills-based directors. These would be people either from the community or from the industry that have experience in waste or recycling operations or financial expertise or legal expertise, for example. And so this 9-member proposed board would govern the corporation while the management and staff of BASWR would continue to lead the day-to-day operations of the corporation. And then any matters affecting ownership or financial exposure or service obligations, decisions that would remain subject to approval by each of the member municipal councils as shareholders. So to support this transition, there are terms of reference that are required. And there's key components to those terms of reference that really ensure both the board of directors for the corporation is set up for success, as well as the shareholders of the corporation feel they have that accountability and transparency over the corporation. So the mandate and purpose would outline the board's role in providing that strategic oversight, ensuring regulatory compliance, safe operations, and acting in the best interests of the corporation and the shareholders. The roles and responsibilities within the terms of reference would define the duties of the board collectively and as individual directors, and their role in approving the budgets and the strategic plans and overseeing risk management of the corporation. The composition and appointments section of the terms and reference will specify the number of directors. We're suggesting 9 would be the most effective composition of the board. The eligibility criteria for the directors, the appointment process, the term lengths, their expectations for the skills that they would bring to the table, and the independence that they would employ using protecting their fiduciary duties to the corporation. As well, in the terms of reference, there'll be meetings and quorum requirements. So that section would detail the frequency of the meetings of the board of directors, what would constitute quorum, the notice procedures, and any use of committees or closed sessions. So this ensures that transparency of governance is embedded into those terms of reference. There'd also be a code of conduct and a conflict of interest that outlines the ethical standards, the confidentiality, and the processes required for dealing with any real or perceived conflicts between of the board members. And that reporting and accountability section would outline the board's responsibility to the shareholders from an accountability and transparency perspective, which is recommended that an annual business plan and audited financial statements and annual performance evaluations are presented to each of the member municipal shareholders of the corporation. There's also significant legal considerations and governing documents that support the transition from the current legacy model into the Municipal Services Corporation. And many of these mechanisms provide the framework for strong municipal oversight, as well as strong and continued service delivery excellence. So the legal authority exists through the Municipal Act. So the MSC would be established under OREG 59906. There would be a shareholder agreement. They're called unanimous shareholder agreements, sometimes referred to as USAs. And this agreement sets out the governance framework and the expectations of the shareholders. So some of the elements that are included in the shareholder agreement are things like the roles and the powers of the shareholder and the board, the reserved matters for shareholder decision-making. So these would be reserved matters that affect the economic interests of each of the 7 member municipalities, the reporting requirements for the BASWR MSC board, the board appointment and removal process, ensuring strategic alignment with municipal objectives, and any performance targets that the shareholders would want to see BASWR meet could be included in the shareholder agreement. Another requirement for transitioning to a municipal services corporation is an asset transfer agreement. So outlined in the OREG 59906, prior to creating an MSC, the member municipalities must determine the assets that will be transferred to the MSC, who currently owns those assets, and then adopt policies related to their transfer. And then finally, the Municipal Services Corporation will have a master services agreement with one or all of the 7 member municipalities. And this master services agreement outlines the services that they'll be providing to each of their clients. And this master services agreement is important because it separates ownership of the corporation as a shareholder from the services procured of the corporation for their municipality. So right now, not all 7 of the municipalities employ BASWR for waste collection, for example. And so this master services agreement is a separate agreement that doesn't tie ownership of the corporation to those services, that allows the Municipal Services Corporation to enter into individual agreements with each of those 7 member municipalities based on the services that they choose to procure from the corporation. And finally, the Administrative Services Agreement is an important agreement that helps support maintaining that lean corporate structure that BASWR has had over the last 20 years, and allows the MSC to leverage some of the expertise, the skills of the professionals that are already working at one or more of the 7 member municipalities for support for things such as additional financial support, human resources, IT support, legal, that type of thing. So if they decide that there is a need for the corporation to have that additional support, instead of onboarding all of their own employees to do each of those portfolios, they can leverage the shareholders or the member municipalities' expertise where they have capacity through an administrative services agreement, where BASWR can pay to access those services from their shareholders. So the reporting and accountability becomes an important consideration to ensure that member municipalities are informed on BASWR's performance and financial outlook without drawing individual councils into the day-to-day operations. So this provides consistent visibility into financial performance and service delivery, as well as risk. But it also empowers the board to govern the day-to-day operations of the corporation and report back to the councils on an as-needed basis. So we are recommending that an annual general meeting take place for the board and municipal shareholders. We are recommending audited financial statements on an annual basis that are made public, and that annual business plans and budgets are put together and shared with the shareholders on an annual basis as information only. So these are all important transparency measures that will maintain, public access to the financial performance of the corporation. So this slide is an important one because it summarizes really the key changes of moving from the current joint undertaking model that is in place from 1999 to the future Municipal Services Corporation model. So the column on the left that says current state, these are currently all of each member municipality's council responsibilities. So you can see the 2 areas of change in the future state under a Municipal Services Corp is that each member municipal council will no longer approve the capital or operating budgets. That would be a delegated responsibility to the Municipal Services Corporation board. They would have that annual responsibility instead. And then you can see as well that the approval of the ownership structure and the economic rights. So how any sort of profit sharing is distributed amongst the shareholders or the member municipalities. That's currently not happening today. But in the future state, that would be something that each of the member municipalities would have the responsibility to determine as shareholders is how they wanted to address that economic interests or economic rights and dividend payouts over time. And then the only other item I want to flag on this slide is that day-to-day operations, both in the current state and in the future state, is not a responsibility of each of the member municipal councils today. Those day-to-day responsibilities have been delegated since 1999 under the joint undertaking model and have been very well performed by the current staff at BASWR as well as the BASWR board that has been governing the corporation thus far. So the financial analysis of the MSC, KPMG completed analysis based on a number of assumptions and forecasted data that we had access to that reflects the current contract revenue that BASWR has to deliver recycling services through waste management and additional miscellaneous revenues from other waste collection services, as well as operating costs. We considered the MSC related governance costs, as well as capital and reserve requirements that would be needed over the next 7 years to the end of the contract period with waste management. And through our analysis, we identified that the Municipal Services Corporation can operate on a financially sustainable basis through to the end of the contract period, which is at least 7 years with the potential for a renewal. And this financial sustainability allows appropriate capacity for reserve funding, reinvestment back into the corporation, and or dividend considerations for paying out to the shareholders or the 7-member municipalities that would own the corporation. Long-term sustainability post 7 years will depend on effective management, successful contract renewal or replacement revenue that's generated over the next 7 years, and continued alignment between the services that are being delivered, the capital needs, and the MSC's operating structure. Finally, our implementation plan. So following the acceptance and endorsement of the business case by member councils, the member municipalities will have a number of activities to implement over the next year in order to establish the Municipal Services Corporation. So once all of the member municipal councils have endorsed this business case, there will need to incorporate the MSC as a separate legal entity. Policies regarding governance and operations would need to be established, including that terms of reference for the board of directors, corporate bylaws, as well as asset transfer policy. So a lot of work to be done there to stand up the corporation from a legal and a governance perspective. As well, the new MSC board would have to be recruited and appointed following the existing appointment structures that each member municipality has for appointing board members. And those master services agreements or administrative services agreements would be established with each of the member municipalities. So that is all that I have today for the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and maybe open the floor to any questions. I'll look at the chat as well. Let me see. Not seeing any comments on the chat either. Perhaps if you are a member of the public and you don't want to come off mute, you could write your question in the chat. We'll leave the chat open for another 5 minutes. Is it possible to get a copy of today's presentation? Yes, absolutely, it is. I believe it is. It's. Um, I think every member municipality has a link to the document I just presented, either posted on their website or through some of their social media channels, but we'll ensure that it is circulated or available on each of the member municipalities' websites for your review. I see another question. If the new board sets the budget, do the partners also approve the budget? So that is one of the key changes, is that the Municipal Services Corporation Board is empowered to set the budget on an annual basis. And the reason for that is because um, it is transitioning to more of a corporation. And so each member municipality still has the ability to appoint their own delegate or representative to that corporation board. But in doing so, they are delegating that responsibility to the board for the annual budget approvals. I see another question. Am I hosting other further presentations similar to this? This was the only public information session that we had scheduled. And another question in regards to who covers any deficits. So the financial model that we put together is based on the existing contract that is in place with Waste Management for the delivery of recycling services across the 7 member municipalities. And that contract is a for-profit contract. So we're not anticipating deficits of any kind over the next 7 years, even with the requirements to reinvest in the corporation to ensure that the trucks stay safe and up to date, and there's money in reserves for emergencies or capital replacements that come up. We accounted for that in the financial model and are still showing that the corporation is financially revenue positive over the next 7 years. But it is important to note that after that contract term ends, if it's not renewed, there is a need to find either additional revenue to ensure sustainability long term, or the corporation would have to reconsider its operations. And I see another comment, maybe not a question for this meeting, but will the municipality increase the frequency of recycling pickup from every 2 weeks to every week? Yeah, great question. And unfortunately, we're really focused on governance during this meeting. We're not diving into the operations. I think that's a question for BASWR's operations and staff. We'll leave it open for a few more minutes. So recording of this meeting, yes, this meeting has been recorded. Fiona has helped set this meeting up. She's the clerk at Brockton, and I'm sure she will help to facilitate the recording being available to the public. What risk do the partners have under this model? Another good question. So the primary risks under this model would really be that delegation of responsibilities to the board of directors for the decision making of the corporation. Um, but that is mitigated through the shareholder agreement. So one of the key concerns is how do the municipal partners ensure that BASWR's business operations don't create liabilities for their taxpayers, for example, and a protection that can be written directly into the shareholder agreement is that any decision making that would require, a major investment. So if BASWR wants to take out a multi-million-dollar loan, for example, or um, a municipal partner chooses to exit the agreement, or um, there's any sort of liability that would affect the taxpayers of each of the partners as shareholders. Those are reserved decision makings for the shareholders. So those risks are mitigated through that shareholder agreement, where any of those types of decisions that materially affect each of the member municipal councils, what they're receiving back from BASWR as far as dividend payouts, or if BASWR wants to do anything that would expose those municipalities to any sort of liabilities, is a reserved decision for each of those member councils. So the BASWR board would not make that decision. It would be delegated back to the shareholders to make that decision. So that's how that risk is mitigated in this structure. Oh, Brianna responded actually to one of those other questions we had around the recycling schedule. Thanks, Brianna. I appreciate that. So, Brianna is one of our working group members that we've been working with from the partner municipalities. And Brianna responded to the question by saying recycling is provincially mandated now, so municipalities aren't responsible for the scheduling changes anymore at all. So that answers that question in regards to scheduling. And I see the chair has asked me to speak to the next steps in the process. So right now, this draft business case is out for public consultation, as well as it's being brought in draft form to all of the partner municipal councils over the month of July. So each member municipality has the opportunity to request changes to our recommended structure or our proposed structure for the corporation, as well as to vote on whether they support the transition to a municipal services corporation in principle. So those meetings are happening over the course of July. So that's the immediate next step in the process. I see Jeff asked the question, will the MSC generate revenue for the local municipalities? And the answer is yes. So we did the 7-year financial model looking at the revenue generated from the waste management contract, as well as considering all of the costs for operation and investment in capital requirements. And the financial model does indicate that on an annual basis, there will be revenue generated for each of the 7 member municipalities. So it will be up to the board to determine how much of that revenue is returned back to each of the member municipalities. But it's certainly a revenue generating contract for the municipal partners. And the only other thing I would note is that each of the 7 municipal partners have a different economic investment currently into BASWR, and that would be reflected in the revenue that is paid out to each of the 7 member municipalities. So it would be based on the current financial interests in the corporation today, that those revenues are paid out accordingly. Great question from Kim. History may be very different from to the future for revenue with changes in how the recycling is done. I think that's a great question. Obviously, the province has implemented changes in the recycling process throughout Ontario just this year. And that's why we didn't forecast a financial model past the 7 years that we know we have a contract in place with Waste Management when we did the financial modeling for this exercise. Because I think, Kim, you make a good point. There are oftentimes things can change, especially when the province is involved in making certain decisions. So we didn't make any projections past 7 years, but we do know that the Services Corporation is profitable up until the end of that contract. Unfortunately, Carolina can't speak to the garbage bag tags either. We're very just focused on the governance of the corporation. That's more of an operational question. Chair Myatt has mentioned or asked the question in regards to governance. Will the 7 municipal partners appoint a council member, or is there flexibility to appoint a community member aside from the 2 skills-based board members? Yes, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Each of the member municipal councils can choose to either appoint a councillor, an elected official, or a community member that they deem appropriate to sit on the board. So there is that flexibility right now in the proposed governance structure. I think we'll wrap up in the next 3 minutes. So if there's any additional comments, please drop them in the chat, and then we'll wrap up in the next 3 to 5 minutes. Okay. Oh, yeah. I think that might be it. Great questions. Thanks very much for those of you from the public that chose to attend. I appreciate your engagement and your interest in this project. Those were excellent questions. And Mr. Chair, I see you've asked us to circulate the presentation to all 7 partners. Definitely, it has gone to all 7 CAOs, so I can request the CAOs circulate it to each of their councils. Okay. I think that's it for tonight. Thanks very much to all of you who attended. Appreciate the feedback. And that document I shared tonight is a public document. So if you are unable to find it on your own municipal website, I think you can reach out, and we'll make sure you have it. It should be widely circulated or widely available. Thanks, everybody.